Hey, good day, Waterside. Glad to be with you after a bit of a hiatus. We're running away from Irma, uh, and it's no coincidence today that I want to be talking about storms because it's one of my favorite topics. Storms are always the thing that come in, and there's a quick Google search indicated 37 Bible verses that have some relationship to storm, and I didn't want to bore you with all the details. Do that yourself, and you'll be able to do the looking and see that storms are pervasive throughout the Bible and what they might have to say to us as we live our lives today. Being caught up in the hurricane myself and having to be in prayer over all of our mission partners down in the Dominican, in Haiti, in Puerto Rico, and in Cuba itself, we just continue to lay this up in front of the Lord's altar to let Him know that we're praying for Him and we're hoping that these storms could be cease and desisting along the way, if that's a good term. But some of the things that we noticed as we were being involved in this ourselves, as we were evacuees in the whole process, was the fact of it's always interesting that a couple things that bear witness to that need to be noted. First of all, we're powerless against the big storm. We are just simply powerless. It just disrupts everything we want to do. It just goes ahead and monkeys up our life, our activity, and we begin to realize and do assessments and sometimes to get going and to flee. Others, oh, I could ride this one out. There wasn't a whole lot of debate in our household. It was going to be a time to get out. It just was a decision-making process to when we'd get out. But we did get out and struggled with about, maybe 5 to 50,000 other people trying to leave at the same time. We were ahead of most, but not as troubled as others who had to make the same trek up Highway I-75 here in South Florida. I don't want to do that again. It's just ugly and it's tough. Back roads are fun, but not that way. It's a struggle. But it really does monkey up our whole approach to life. Everything ceases. We're powerless. We really are clueless as to what goes on. God's mighty creative power, where these low pressure systems come in and just blast with wind and just shred and rip and tear and destroy all that we feel important or all we see around us in the created good. There's some great power that's going on here. So we're powerless. And secondly, it's fun to watch people as to what they take with them. Because all of a sudden, these are the personal effects you don't want to lose. And so, you grab hold of whatever. And some cars were packed to the gills that we saw on the rest areas and that were passing us. Or we had a lot of time to look on the interstate because a lot of times we were going nowhere, standing still, looking at the cars around. Some had things packed all the way up past the windows in the back seat. You couldn't see anything. Some were dragging trailers. Some had things attached to the roofs and everything. Our tangible stuff that we have to take with us becomes property that is very important to us. And I'm not trying to belittle that whatsoever. But it was interesting to see what's important to some people and not the others. It's important that these physical possessions are always at close hand, and we all felt that possessions could be replaced. Get out of here, get to safety, run, flee, do what you need to do. But not everybody did that appropriately, and not everybody did that quickly. And a lot of people have a high stake in what they own and what they bring with them. And it's always interesting to just look around and see what other people are about doing. Equally as interesting is to see how people behave with each other. There's always that get angry and get mad and short-tempered. By and large, we've found that people were in good stead. We're all in this together. We're running as fast as we can. There were some oddball situations that develop along the way, as I guess with any evacuation situation. But as we sit back and watch the comedy of errors at humanity, how do you get 15,000 people in a rest area all at the same time? Interesting. And you end up just wondering, wow, who was thinking of this or how did we plan for that? And our structure and our infrastructure always needs to be improved along the way as we come up with better ideas to deal with situations like this. Well, it's interesting that we have all of these things going on from our perspective because as we face these storms, there's fear, there's anxiety, there's problems, there are issues of concern and prayers to the Almighty to back off a little bit. The storms are a great idea, God, but could it be somewhere else? We struggle with that. And I think these storms come along and provide us with some good messages or good thoughts to at least consider. And each person has to do it for themselves, I'm sure. But I know for myself, I ask myself the question, or maybe I acknowledge the fact, yeah, I am kind of powerless. There's not much I can do here. It's time to get out where I might be safe for a while. And you you have a hard time struggling with that because you think it through. Oh, I could do better, or I don't want to go to point A. I'll just stay here. It's easier, life threatening, but easier. We've saw that again and again and again down here. If I heard the phrase, my mother or my father didn't want to leave or didn't want to evacuate, I must have heard that 50 times from people all around the place. And one of the things you get a sense of is people just don't want to break away from that comfortable rut that they're in, and they don't want to even move to safety if they don't. But we're powerless, and we need to realize that we're powerless. And I think we need to realize as well the amount of faith that we put into the things, the stuff of what we have. As we drove around down on Marco Island, as we drove around in South Florida in a variety of different places, on the curbs are just tons of vegetation. On the curbs are just tons of old furniture, things that have been damaged by the hurricane and by the flooding that's been going along with it. They're just all stacked up in a row, useless, no longer any good. These are things that we've held on to, we've clung hold of with tight fists because it's the stuff that defines our life. And I begin to think that the stuff isn't really what matters as much as the relationships, as the people in our lives. It's good to have kids telling you, get out of town, Dad, beat it, leave. As Cheryl and I felt time and time again, it was just good to know that our kids were really pulling for us to leave and to evacuate, and that's good. It's those relationships that are more important than all the stuff in the world. We threw what we felt was important in the back of our car and boogied. And that's just what I think a lot of people did as well. But there are those people who are caught up with things along the way that just simply have to follow their own understanding, and they just go ahead and get drawn into a possessions lifestyle. The more things that they have, but those things crumble against the hurricane. They crumble against the big wind. They become useless and sop up the water when the floods come. We need to realize where our true wealth resides, and it's not here. This is a temporary time. This is a temporary situation in which we live. The old hymn says, "But heaven is my home." And we're mindful of the fact that as God gives us life and breath, that we should be mindful of that. Use it wisely. Don't put ourselves into risky situations if at all possible. But to go ahead and realize as well that God gifts us with the ability to face these storms and difficult situations where we could be truly human, help one another. Don't sit back and going, well, I'm glad it's over there and not here. Because, as we all know, sooner or later, it comes around here to them as well. Our prayers are for those people in a variety of situations that are struggling, and we lift those prayers up, and we hope that God hears those prayers, somehow alleviates those who are struggling from one of our towns we used to live in, Rockport, Texas, and our friends there and our old waterside contacts that were there. All those people here in South Florida that are struggling as well with the after effects of Irma. We have the Mexico City earthquakes that are deep on our hearts and on our minds for those folks we know from Mexico and their families and extended families. for friends in the Caribbean up and down who are struggling as a result of storm after storm after storm that has come along. It's just make life difficult. But in it all, we can be confident that God hears our prayer. We can be confident that He is the one who can still the storm. I've seen more often than not that prayers of a group of people just praying that God would rescind the storm or weaken it could take place. And I really felt that Irma, although it's quite devastating and everything, it could have been a lot worse. But I think as a result, an answer to prayers, it did what it did. And it was significant, but again, had it taken a degree to one side or the other, it could have been life-shattering. We're blessed that God hears our prayer, that He joins with us as we live in that created good. We know that the storm will come. We know it might be tomorrow. We know it might be in weeks ahead. We just realize that how we live our lives, we ought to probably stay close to Him and not go wandering around, so that if anything does ever happen to us, we might be caught in a good place and not so much away from Him in a bad place. We're mindful of what our moms and dads used to probably tell us, don't get caught doing something you shouldn't be doing. And maybe it's about time that we as a human race begin to realize that we're into things we should really be getting into. Well, blessings be with you all. We ask your continued prayers for our mission partners along the way. If you're interested in all and whatsoever helping out those that are in the Caribbean, we have direct pipelines into them that we can send aid and help. So if you're interested, just give me a buzz and let me know. We'd be happy to take your gift and get it right to them, or they could do some good with it. Be blessed. We'll talk soon. Thanks again for watching.